Boruto may have future sight. In fact, chapter 23, which just came out of Two Blue Vortex, may have confirmed exactly that. See, chapter 23 of Two Blue Vortex is officially out. And while it was a massive chapter that featured things like the reveal of how the Ten Paths works, the idea that Boruto somehow, some way might lie outside of the purview of the Ten Paths, Kawaki showing up in the battle against Jura and spiking him through the back of the head with a chakra rod, and so much more, the one thing that keeps holding my attention from this incredibly packed chapter is the fact that somehow, some way, Boruto and Kawaki were able to plan a precise and detailed counterattack against Jura in a place where their battle would have little to no collateral damage, while also planning a pickup with Delta for the injured Team 7 after their battle against Ryu and Matsuri, all without Ada knowing. Now, while this might seem like a minor detail to a lot of you, there are very, and I mean very few ways that either Boruto or Kawaki could keep any information from Ada. While yes, Ada doesn't have an eye on everybody all the time, Ada is well known to be completely and totally obsessed with not only Kawaki, but also Boruto. And thus, if she's keeping an eye on anybody, most of the time it is those two. Especially if they're together. And yet somehow when Kawaki appeared on the battlefield behind Jura and stabbed him through the back of the head, Ada was completely baffled. So baffled that she turned to Kashin Koji and asked him if he understood why Kawaki was currently on the battlefield. And while there are a couple of possible explanations about how Boruto, Kawaki, and Delta could have possibly coordinated an attack against Jura while also coordinating an escape plan for Team 7, all without Ada knowing, for the life of me, the one I can't get out of my head is that Boruto has some kind of future sight ability not tied to the Ten Paths. And I think it has to do with his karmic resonance. So buckle up because we got a big one today, because today we're talking Boruto has predicted the future. But before we get to explaining anything, guys, please, for me, like this video, subscribe to the page, and hit that noti bell. And if you guys are looking for one additional NC Hammer 23 video a week, you can go ahead and find my Naruto reaction series using the fourth wall link in my description below. So, the last time that we saw that Boruto and Kawaki were talking was chapter 15 of Two Blue Vortex, when the two of them stood atop the Hokage stone faces that they are prophesized to destroy one day, and chatted about a wide array of topics. Everything from the current status of Boruto and Momoshiki's relationship, the loss of Sasuke, Boruto's inability to control his karma marking, all the way to the most important topic the two of them talked about, which was the Shinju. And over the course of this conversation, Boruto highlighted to Kawaki that while the most effective way for Kawaki to train to get stronger to help him in battle against Jura, who he cannot defeat alone, would be for him to release Naruto and train with Naruto, Boruto says that the idea of releasing Naruto and training with him would take too much time to get Kawaki to the level of strength that he needs to be at to fight against Jura. And thus Boruto tells Kawaki something that we didn't look into enough when he told him originally a couple of months ago. Not even a couple of months ago, like almost a year ago, which was that Amado has actually been keeping Kawaki's strength in check. See, in the moment, the idea that Boruto was privy to something from the future that nobody else could possibly be privy to made a lot of sense. I mean, Kashin Koji is his teacher, and Kashin Koji has the Ten Paths. And thus Kashin Koji probably told Boruto to tell Kawaki that Amado placed limiters on him so Kawaki can get stronger and the two of them can battle against Jura, right? I mean, that wouldn't be the first time that Kashin Koji has done something like this. The only reason that Boruto currently knows Rasengan, Uzahiko, and Flying Raijin is because Kashin Koji did that exact thing with Boruto twice. And therefore, yeah, we didn't blink at the idea that somehow Boruto is privy to information from the future. And we definitely didn't blink at the idea that Boruto was using that information to try and get Kawaki strong enough to battle against Jura. I mean, after all, that must be Kashin Koji's plan, right? Boruto and Kawaki work together to defeat Jura. However, after the events of chapter 23, the idea that it was Kashin Koji who told Boruto to tell Kawaki that he has limiters on him, well, it seems hazy. See, because Kashin Koji's Ten Paths does not foresee a future where Kawaki pulls up on this battle against Jura and stabs him through the back of his head. In fact, Kashin Koji's Ten Paths didn't even see a future where Boruto has a conversation with Kawaki and tells him about his limiters. See, because in chapter 23, when Kashin Koji is getting an update from his Ten Paths, an update that's now built around the universe in which where Kawaki can pop into this battle against Jura and save Boruto's life, Kashin Koji doesn't go, oh, this must be because of the conversation that Boruto and Kawaki had about his limiters. No, Kashin Koji says, and I quote here, Kawaki joining in, "This is a development I've never seen before, that Boruto, in just these past few days, he must have told Kawaki something." right? Implying that Kashin Koji was not privy to the conversation that happened on the stone faces. And while there is hypothetically a possibility that Kashin Koji told Boruto about Kawaki having limiters on him and just didn't tell Boruto to go tell Kawaki about that information, Kashin Koji kind of seems baffled about what Boruto could have possibly told Kawaki. And Kashin Koji isn't the only person out of the loop, because when Kawaki pulls up on the battlefield against Jura, Ada is also out of the loop. And thus the person who's able to see the infinite future timelines that all possibilities could possibly unfurl into, and the person who's able to see everything that's going on Earth and everything that has happened on Earth since her birth, did not see Kawaki pulling up in this battle against Jura. How does that happen? How does Boruto convey the information necessary to Kawaki and Delta as to where exactly to be without either Kashin Koji or Ada knowing? And when did he pass this information along to them? See, we know, or at least we thought we knew the last time that Boruto and Kawaki had a conversation. It was chapter 15 on the Hokage Stone Faces. And over the duration of that conversation, Kawaki and Boruto do not once talk about the logistics of planning a two-pronged attack against Jura after luring him out of their hideout by jumping to the Land of Wind. And thus the conversation between Boruto and Kawaki must not have taken place right then and there. What's even crazier is that Boruto isn't technically the reason that Team 7 was sent to the Land of Wind. See, it was the combined effort of Ada, Kashin Koji, and Shikamaru that got Team 7 to link up with Araya and Yodo in the Land of Wind to battle against Ryu and Matsuri, not Boruto. And what's more, that plan to send Team 7 to the Land of Wind is something that happened after Boruto and Kawaki's conversation in chapter 15. See, it wasn't until Ada pulled up on Shikamaru to talk about the unveiling of the new Shinju in Ryu that over the course of their conversation, it was revealed that Ada and Kashin Koji are working together. Because when Shikamaru asked Ada about who Boruto's shadow accomplice was, and then sussed out that it was Kashin Koji, a toad revealed itself from Ada's hair. And that toad was the conduit with which Kashin Koji could communicate with Shikamaru. At which point Kashin Koji told Shikamaru that the best course of action was to send Team 7 to the Land of Wind, and about how only the combined efforts of Team 7 and 2/3 stood a chance to cut down either Ryu or Matsuri or both when they pulled up in the Land of Wind looking for the iron sand cocoon that Gaara was in. But some of you who are good at getting to the point a little bit before I do are probably thinking to yourselves right now, oh, well then it seems fairly obvious as to how Kawaki and Delta got the information about when and where to be in the Land of Wind. They got it from Shikamaru, right? I mean, Shikamaru was the person who coordinated the mission to send Team 7 to the Land of Wind to meet up with Araya and Yodo. And therefore, if anybody had the information to direct Kawaki and Delta to the proper locations to help Team 7, it would be Shikamaru. He's the one planning all of this, alongside Kashin Koji and kind of Ada. But that's the kicker, right there. Ada is surprised when Kawaki shows up on the battlefield. But if Ada's involved with the planning of sending Team 7 to link up with Araya and Yoda in the Land of Wind, as she literally didn't even have to use her Senrigan to be privy to the conversation between Kashin Koji and Shikamaru, why would she not know about the second prong of the attack, which was Kawaki and Delta? Why would she need to ask Kashin Koji what's going on as to why Kawaki has just appeared on the battlefield? Moreover, these plans went far beyond the idea of Shikamaru just sending Team 7 to meet up with Araya and Yodo in the Land of Wind and battle against Ryu and Matsuri, on account of the fact that Delta, finding Konohamaru, Mitsuki, and Sarada, seemed relatively pre-coordinated, and both Boruto and Kawaki seemed to understand that they would both be on the battlefield together. To take this even one step further, it appears as though Delta knew exactly who she was coming to save, as when she appears at the place where Team 7 met up with Araya and Yodo, the place that Boruto sent them, she says, and I quote, "Ah, there they are, right here. Konohamaru, Mitsuki, and Sarada. Looks like all three of them are safe." She doesn't ask about Yodo, she doesn't ask about Araya, she seems to know that she's only there for the three of them. But how would she know only the three of them would be there to show up? So how did this heavily coordinated plan that apparently had exact locations, people who were going to be there, and exact timing planned down to a T, all get planned without Ada being even remotely privy to any of it? Well, the way I see it, there's three possibilities. And I will go through those three possibilities from my least favorite to my most favorite. And unfortunately, up first, my least favorite possibility is also probably one of the more likely possibilities, because the first possibility as to how all of this could have been coordinated lies strictly with Shikamaru. See, it's not impossible to keep information from Ada. As long as somehow you telepathically communicate with somebody else, Ada cannot be privy to the conversations that you're having. This is why the mental connection that Ino has been able to establish between people in Konoha has become so increasingly important. Because while Ada may be suspicious as to why you've been staring at the window for the last 20 minutes, that doesn't mean that she's she's privy to the conversation that you're having inside of your head. And therefore there is a somewhat distinct possibility that Boruto and Kawaki, when they were both in the village around chapter 15, established a mental connection with Shikamaru, possibly through the help of Ino or another Yamanaka. It doesn't have to be Ino, as Ino's already identified that she no longer wants anything to do with Boruto, as she believes that he's a traitor, and she believes that any and all collusion with Boruto from Shikamaru is also him operating as a traitor against the interests of the Leaf. But anyway, Shikamaru, Boruto, and Kawaki used that mental connection to perfectly coordinate a plan where Boruto would pull up in the late stages of this battle against Ryu and Matsuri as Team 7 2/3 were seemingly on the ropes, knowing full well that when Boruto appeared in the Land of Wind, Juro would also pull himself out of hiding in a place where the battle between Boruto, himself, and Kawaki would have little to no collateral damage. I mean, they're in the middle of an abandoned desert. And while it has been established that Juro most likely won't run amok inside of Konoha, the idea of having this battle in the outskirts of the Land of Wind is kind of a best case scenario. Now, you could obviously make the point that excluding Ada from this conversation is a bit odd from Shikamaru, on account of the fact that Ada is responsible for feeding the majority of the information that's making this attack possible in the first place to Shikamaru. I mean, without Ada being able to confirm that Ryu does now exist, and without Ada acting as the bridge or the in-between between Kashin, Koji, and Shikamaru, the plan to formulate Team 7 2/3 and to take out Ryu and Matsuri never would have been formed in the first place. And therefore, it appears as though Ada is absolutely an ally of Konoha, and a powerful one at that. So as to why Shikamaru wouldn't key Ada in this moment is a bit of a mystery, except for the fact that it's actually not really that much of a mystery. See, I'm not saying that Shikamaru doesn't trust Ada. However, it is very clearly set up while Ada's having her conversation with Shikamaru and then Kashin Koji's having his conversation with Shikamaru that Ada and Kashin Koji are in cahoots. And they 100% are, to the point now where they've been having a conversation between just the two of them about what's been going down in the Land of Wind for the last couple of chapters. Ada and Kashin Koji work together, and there's really no reason that not only Shikamaru but also Boruto should not be privy to this fact. And therefore, any and all information that's fed to Ada is also fed to Kashin Koji, who is, for all intents and purposes, an outside factor. See, not only does Shikamaru not know Kashin Koji, Shikamaru also undoubtedly probably doesn't know as to whether or not he should trust Kashin Koji. I mean, yes, just like with Ada, without Kashin Koji, Shikamaru would have been privy to all the information that he was privy to that allowed for him to form Team 7 2/3 and take out Ryu and Matsuri. So, while just like with Ada, it seems though Kashin Koji is an ally of the Leaf, I actually don't think the decision to keep Kashin Koji out of the mix here was up to Shikamaru. I actually believe it was up to Boruto. See, because if we are assuming that Boruto, Kawaki, and Shikamaru were able to connect telepathically through the power of the Yamanaka, this means they would have to intentionally loop in Ada or intentionally loop in Kashin Koji, who apparently in the actions of Boruto in this moment of communicating with Kawaki, possibly Shikamaru, and Delta, did not change the futures that were laid out to Kashin Koji through the Ten Paths. And therefore any and all information that needed to be passed to either Ada or Kashin Koji had to be done so intentionally. But if Kashin Koji became privy to the idea that Boruto was always planning on flying off to the Land of Wind, it would make a fair amount of sense considering the information that Kashin Koji was privy to, that Kashin Koji would do literally everything in his power to stop Boruto from doing exactly that. And therefore the reason that Ada was excluded from the conversation about Boruto and Kawaki pulling up on Juro in the Land of Wind is because she would pass that information along to Kashin Koji, who would undermine the plan. And that to me is probably the highest possibility scenario that explains how Boruto and Kawaki ended up in the same place at the same time, with Delta saving the injured Team 7. Shikamaru is a tactical genius. He understands who talks to who and who needs to be where. And he has means of getting around Ada's ability to access all information. Means, mind you, that he's used before, rather heavily. Now, the second possibility is substantially less likely, but it also does have a fair chance at possibly being proven to be true one day. See, the second possibility is that somehow, some way, Boruto and Kashin Koji have the ability to talk telepathically without Ino. See, it's been established for the entire run of Boruto that Boruto and Kawaki's karma markings are linked somehow, to the point where both of their karma markings manifested way faster than they were supposed to because their karma markings had so much resonance. And now, when either one of them tries to activate their karma marking around the other, it literally forces the other into activating their karma marking, which has been bad for Boruto. Ties into the fact that Boruto and Kawaki are now both full-blooded Otsutskis. 100% extraction of the karma markings means they're no longer human. And then consider the fact that multiple, and I mean multiple Otsutsuki, have shown the ability to be able to project their consciousness and speak telepathically to other other people, like Hagoromo talking to Naruto and Sasuke and a bunch of other people in the 4th Great Shinobi World War, and both Momoshiki and Ishiki, though admittedly after their deaths, being able to project their consciousnesses to either Boruto or Code to explain to them what's going to happen now that they are dead. And yes, in all 3 of these scenarios, the Otsutskis in question are dead. However, consciousness projection is not a new concept in the Naruto universe. Dan, Tsunade's lover, before Jiraiya, had an absolutely absurd ability that allowed for him to separate his soul from his body, allowing him to pop into the bodies of others and control them, discombobulate their souls, or even just communicate at far distances away from his own physical body. It ties into the fact that the Yamanaka have the ability to telepathically communicate with each other and also set up telepathic links between people who aren't even themselves, and then consider the fact that literally all abilities stem from the Otsutsuki, and therefore the Otsutsuki should have the ability to use any and all abilities that we see from humans, and that Boruto and Kawaki are both full-blooded Otsutskis, and the idea that somehow, someway, on account of their karmic resonance, Boruto and Kawaki are able to telepathically communicate isn't really all that crazy. And therefore the reason that Boruto and Kawaki are able to plan this incredibly complicated battle against Jura without Ada knowing is because they were able to do it in their minds. Now, as to how Kawaki was able to pass along the information about where Team 7 would be to Delta without Ada knowing, I mean, Ada doesn't watch every single thing that Kawaki does, and we know for a fact that she's been focused on Boruto for the last couple of minutes, and so Kawaki could have told Delta where to go a couple of minutes ago, and while Ada was concentrated on Boruto, she wouldn't be privy to that information. But yeah, I'll admit the second theory probably isn't the best one. But you know what is the best one? Our third and final theory. A theory that I not only believe is highly possible, but I also absolutely love. See, I've been trying to figure out exactly how Delta knew where Team 7 was going to be for a couple of days now. And just this morning, while I was writing down some information, somebody by the name of Sin Factor reached out to me online and sent me a rather comprehensive email about how all of this could possibly be explained by Boruto having future sight. And honestly, I tend to agree. See, this theory starts by talking about something that we've already talked about earlier in this video. That chapter 23 makes it seem as though that Kashin Koji was completely unprivy to the conversation that Kawaki and Boruto had in chapter 15. And yeah, it does seem like Kashin Koji didn't know anything about what Boruto told Kawaki about his limiters and how Amado was the one who placed them on them and how he needed to go to Amado to get those limiters removed so he would be stronger at the battle against Jura. And thus it seems as though in all of these supposedly unlimited 10 paths futures, not a single one of them highlighted the possibility that somehow, some way Boruto would communicate with Kawaki about his limiters. But how? How can you have access to unlimited futures and somehow Boruto doing a relatively logical thing of reaching out to Kawaki, the person he needs to help him in the battle against Jura, with incredibly prudent information, wasn't one of the possible futures that the 10 paths foresaw? Well, this theory ties into a theory that we've talked about a couple of times on this channel, that somehow, someway, this Boruto, the Boruto that we have in this telling of Two Blue Vortex, that is to assume that there's some kind of multi-dimensional aspect to Boruto, lies outside of the purview of the 10 paths Shinjutsu ability. But why? Well, we can't answer the entirety of that question right now. What we can answer is why, in this one specific circumstance, Boruto is able to lie outside of the purview of the 10 paths ability. And that's because this Boruto has his own future sight capabilities. Future sight capabilities that allow for Boruto to make decisions that wouldn't be told to Kashin Koji through his 10 paths. Because somehow, some way, this ability isn't constrained under what the 10 paths would identify as normal and or possible futures. See, the idea that Kashin Koji was able to see all of the possible futures where Boruto jumped to the Land of Wind and tried to battle against Jura in a 1v1 and then proceeded to get absolutely waxed by Jura had no circumstances where Kawaki pulled up and helped Boruto in this battle against Jura just seems patently unlikely. Like, Kashin Koji was 100% sure that if Boruto went to battle against Jura that he would die and the world would end, which means that in every single possible future that Kashin Koji saw where Boruto hopped to the Land of Wind to battle against Jura, Boruto died. There was literally no possibility to Kashin Koji that Kawaki could pull up in this fight. And this is why Kashin Koji says that Boruto must have told Kawaki something in the last couple of days. And thus Kawaki also in a sense became an anomaly in the 10 paths, swapping up the possible predictions into an entirely new set of infinite futures. But when those futures changed, the second that Boruto told Kawaki to get his limiters removed, I mean, Kawaki in that moment would immediately be acting outside of the purview of the 10 paths predictions. The idea that those futures would only change when Kawaki flies into action doesn't make a whole lot of sense. See, because that's the argument that a lot of people are gonna make here. oh, the 10 pass predictions only changed because Kawaki did something that lied outside of the idea of any of the predictions of the infinite possible futures of the 10 paths. You know, when he stabbed Jura through the back of the head. But if a possibility that the 10 paths did not see coming is what causes an update to come to Kashinkoji, then wouldn't that happen the moment that Boruto decides to have a conversation with Kawaki about lifting his limiters? And thus, when Kashinkoji said that he hasn't had an update in 6 days, it seems as though these updates from the 10 paths just happen periodically, not necessarily tied to the idea of something shifting. And thus, Kashinkoji should have 100% been privy to not only the conversation that Boruto had with Kawaki, but also the idea that Kawaki would pull up on this battle against Jura. I mean, he even foresaw in this future that Yodo would probably die. And thus, what makes the most sense? What combination of things allows for Boruto to send Team 7 to the exact right location to be saved by Delta, allows him to understand that jumping into this battle against Jura completely unmatched won't lead to his death and the subsequent end of the world, and also keeps Ada and Kashinkoji out of the loop? Well, to me, sometimes the best answer is the simplest. See, we fully understand, and in fact, Ikimoto literally doubled down on this recently in an interview, that Momoshiki has the ability to see the future, but that ability is not the 10 paths. See, the reason that Momoshiki is always talking about what Boruto's supposed to be doing and why Boruto shouldn't be doing what he's doing and how this wasn't supposed to go this way is because Momoshiki has a limited version of future sight that, while different and weaker than 10 paths, is still future sight. Now, while Boruto's relationship with his karma marking currently is contentious at best, there was a moment recently when Boruto did activate his karma marking, and that's when it was forcibly activated on him because Kawaki activated his karma marking near Boruto. So what does all of this mean? Well, the idea that somebody who bears the karma marking of an Otsutsuki gets their abilities is not a new concept. Kawaki's literal entire moveset is stolen from Ishiki, so the idea that Boruto would be able to get some of the abilities of Momoshiki by activating his karma marking isn't all that crazy. And therefore, in that temporary moment when Boruto was trying to reel his karma marking back in, he could have been given glimpses of the future, glimpses that would allow for him to act outside the purview of the 10 paths foreseen futures. And thus the reason that seemingly Boruto and Kawaki and Delta were able to coordinate this crazy attack against Jura well, is because they didn't. See, in this moment when Boruto was trying to reel his karma marking back in, he probably saw glimpses of a future where he battled against Jura and Kawaki pulled up to save him in this battle. He most likely foresaw Delta finding Sarada, Mitsuki, and Konohamaru in the exact position that they were found. And thus all Boruto had to do when pulling up on this fight was survive long enough that Kawaki could save him and direct Team 7 to exactly where he saw Delta save them in his future sight projections. And thus the reason that Ada didn't see any of this coming is because nobody talked about it. Boruto was able to foresee exactly what Kawaki would do after getting his limiters removed. He was able to foresee that he would bring Delta and that Delta would discover Team 7. Therefore, all Boruto had to do was tip the first domino, put himself in position to fulfill the future that he saw coming to pass. And thus, because he saw a future where Kawaki had his limiters removed and possibly even saw the conversation that he had with Kawaki about getting his limiters removed, Boruto understood that in order to put himself in the best possible situation to defeat Jura, he had to follow the prophecy that he saw from Momoshiki's ability, a future sight ability that allows for him to exist outside of even the most unlikely predictions of the 10 paths, an ability that allows for him to coordinate with the people around him without Ada being privy to it because he's technically not coordinating with the people around him. It is the perfect workaround for Boruto to act as an autonomous figure, not dictated by the whims of Kashinkoji, who's okay with sacrificing Boruto's friends for the greater good, and all the while not being eavesdropped on by Ada, whose allegiances are currently still kind of unknown to Boruto. To me, this is the most likely explanation as to how Chapter 23 came to pass, or is at least my favorite possible explanation. I mean, obviously it could have been Shikamaru. But what do you guys think? How do you think this highly coordinated attack against Jura came to pass? Do you think it was a future sight ability? Do you think it had to do with Ino? What? Let me know in the comments below. And while you're down there, please, for me, like this video, subscribe to the page, and hit that noti bell. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have to make TikToks for the first time in like years. I just haven't had time.